The holiday season is often described as the most wonderful time of the year, but for those grieving the loss of a loved one, it can be one of the most painful. Statistics show that depression and anxiety spike during the holidays, with an estimated 64% of people who experience loss reporting that the season intensifies their grief. The sights, sounds, and smells of the holidays trigger memories, making it difficult to escape the aching void left behind. For those grieving, the cheerful music, glittering decorations, and festive gatherings can feel like cruel reminders of what's missing. I used to love the holidays. They were a time for laughter, traditions, and creating new memories with the people I loved most. But everything changed the year I lost my mother. Her absence transformed the season into a constant reminder of what I would never have again. The first holiday without her felt like a cruel joke. How could the world still celebrate when my heart was shattered? Every carol, every brightly lit tree, every family photo posted online felt like salt in an open wound. I remember walking into a store that first December and hearing a familiar holiday song. It was one she used to sing when she was cooking our holiday meal. I froze in the middle of the aisle, unable to move. The cheerful lyrics sliced through me, and before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face. I left my cart and ran out of the store, sobbing in the parking lot as shoppers passed by, oblivious to my pain. The air was cold, but the grief inside me was colder. The hardest part wasn't just the memories, it was the absence of them. There were no more late-night gift wrapping sessions, no more sneaking around trying to catch her putting presents under the tree, no more laughter over burned cookies that didn't quite turn out right. I felt lost, like I was drifting through a season that no longer belonged to me. The warmth and joy that used to fill my heart had been replaced with a gnawing emptiness. I tried to go through the motions. I decorated the tree, though it felt hollow. I sent out holiday cards, each one a painful reminder of her absence. Friends and family meant well, offering kind words and hugs, but their cheer only deepened my isolation. They didn't know how much effort it took just to get out of bed in the morning, to force a smile, to breathe through the weight pressing down on my chest. The holiday gatherings were the worst. People said things like, "She would want you to be happy," or "She's in a better place," as if those clichés could fill the gaping hole she left behind. I nodded politely, but inside, I was screaming. I wanted to yell, "You don't understand. She's gone, and no amount of holiday cheer will bring her back." Even the simple act of setting the table was a minefield of pain. Her place was empty, and no one dared sit there. I tried to fill the void with distractions, volunteering, shopping, anything to avoid sitting with the grief. But it was always there, lurking in the quiet moments when the world went still. At night, when the house was silent, the pain felt unbearable. The twinkling lights on the tree became blurred through my tears as I sat on the couch, clutching her favorite ornament to my chest. One night, the pain became too much. I curled up on the floor next to the tree, sobbing until there was nothing left. I whispered into the dark, "I don't know how to do this without you." The holidays had become a relentless storm, and I was drowning. But I couldn't tell anyone how deeply I was hurting. Everyone expected me to move on, to find joy again, but I couldn't. I was stuck in a loop of memories and longing. The worst part was the guilt. How could I even think about enjoying the holidays without her? The thought felt like a betrayal. The loneliness was crushing. People around me were celebrating, exchanging gifts, and making plans. I felt like an outsider, standing on the edge of a world I no longer recognized. The very things that used to bring me joy now felt like unbearable reminders of what I had lost. I wished I could fast forward through the season, skip the lights and the songs, and wake up when it was all over. The truth is, grief during the holidays is a heavy, suffocating weight. It steals the light from the brightest season and leaves you grasping for anything to hold on to. It is waking up every day and realizing that nothing will ever be the same again. It is the ache of longing for one more moment, one more laugh, one more hug. I wish I could tell you that I found the strength to embrace the holidays again, but that would be a lie. The pain didn't vanish, and the void didn't fill. But I learned to carry it. I learned to sit with the emptiness and acknowledge it without letting it consume me. This is where I leave you for now. I won't offer solutions here because that's not what this moment is for. This moment is for feeling the pain, for sitting in the ache, and for honoring the loss. If you are grieving during this holiday season, know that you are not alone. And though it may not feel like it now, you are stronger than you think. The days blurred together after that breakdown on the floor. It was as though time had slowed, each second dragging like a heavy chain around my neck. Every morning, I would wake up hoping the ache would be lighter, but it never was. The holidays stretched on, a cruel reminder of all I had lost. I tried to fake it, to pretend that I could be like everyone else. But grief has a way of seeping through even the thickest walls you try to build. There were moments when I couldn't help but feel angry. Angry at the world for continuing on as if nothing had happened. Angry at the people who still had their loved ones. Angry that I couldn't just feel normal again. I avoided the places we used to go, skipped out on traditions we once shared, and ignored invitations to gatherings that felt too painful to face. Yet, no matter how much I ran, the reminders found me. I saw her face in the crowd of smiling strangers. I heard her laugh in the voices of people passing by. Even the scent of cinnamon or pine would hit me like a punch in the chest, triggering an onslaught of memories that made my heart ache. I remember one evening, sitting in my car outside a holiday party I had reluctantly agreed to attend. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, tears silently streaming down my face. I couldn't bring myself to go inside. The thought of plastering on a fake smile, of pretending I was okay, felt like more than I could bear. Instead, I sat there in the cold, engine off, watching people through the frosted windshield as they laughed and embraced, their joy a stark contrast to the emptiness inside me. The loneliness was the hardest part. It wasn't just the absence of her, but the way grief isolated me. People tried to be supportive, but they didn't really know what to say. Time heals all wounds, they'd offer, as if those words could stitch up the gaping hole in my chest. Others avoided the subject entirely, afraid that mentioning her would somehow make things worse. But it was the silence that cut the deepest, the unspoken understanding that they were moving on, while I remained trapped in the past. Nights were the worst. I would lie in bed staring at the ceiling, the darkness pressing in around me, and wonder how I would survive this. There were moments when I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of my own sorrow. The quiet amplified everything, the emptiness of the house, the echo of her absence, the memories of better times that played on repeat in my mind. I stopped decorating the house that year. It felt wrong to hang stockings when hers would remain empty. I didn't put up a tree because I couldn't bear the sight of it without her. Instead, I sat in the dim light, surrounded by the shadows of what used to be, and let the sadness wash over me. One particularly cold night, I found myself sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the stars. The world was so still, the only sound the soft rustle of the wind through the bare branches. I whispered into the darkness, asking questions that had no answers. Why did she have to go? Why did the holidays have to be so hard? Why couldn't I just move on? The stars offered no comfort, only their distant, indifferent glow. I felt like I was disappearing. The person I used to be, the one who loved caroling, baking cookies, and watching holiday movies, was gone. All that remained was a hollow shell, weighed down by grief and longing. I didn't know who I was without her, and that uncertainty was terrifying. In those quiet moments of despair, I realized something deeply painful: grief doesn't have an endpoint. It's not something you get over or move past. It becomes a part of you, reshaping who you are in ways you never expected. And during the holidays, when the world is bursting with joy and celebration, that grief can feel unbearable. But if there was one thing I learned through that first holiday season without her, it was this: I wasn't as alone as I thought. Though I couldn't feel it then, others had walked this path before me, stumbling through the same darkness, carrying the same heavy burden. And while I couldn't see it at the time, there was a faint, distant light waiting beyond the shadows. I won't lie and say that I found peace that year. I didn't. The pain was raw and consuming, and the holidays remained a bitter reminder of what I had lost. But I survived it. Somehow, I made it through those endless nights and hollow days. And for now, that was enough. If you find yourself grieving during this season, know that you're not alone in the dark. It may feel like the world has forgotten your pain, but there is strength in simply holding on, even when it feels like the weight will crush you. Sometimes, survival is the only victory you need. Grief, especially during the holiday season, feels like a storm that refuses to pass. That first year was a whirlwind of emotions I never expected, but somehow, I survived. Yet surviving wasn't enough. As the days dragged on and the next holiday season approached, I knew I couldn't endure another year trapped in the same cycle of pain. I had to find a way to heal, or at least, a way to breathe without feeling like I was drowning in sorrow. The first step was the hardest, acknowledging that I needed help. Grief isolates you, and in that isolation, you start to believe you have to face it alone. But I couldn't do it alone. I had spent too many sleepless nights staring at the ceiling, too many days numb to the world, and I knew something had to change. I reached out, reluctantly at first, to a friend I hadn't spoken to in a while. I didn't even know what I was asking for, but just hearing someone else's voice, someone willing to listen without judgment, was a lifeline I didn't realize I needed. That simple act of reaching out opened a door I hadn't expected. I began to see that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant learning how to live with the loss in a way that honored my loved one without letting it consume me. I decided to try something new, small steps that didn't feel monumental but slowly helped me rebuild my shattered world. One of the first things I did was create a space in my home dedicated to their memory. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a small table with a few photos, a candle, and their favorite holiday decoration. I thought it would make the pain worse, but instead, it gave me a sense of peace. I found myself lighting the candle every evening, sitting quietly, and talking to them as if they were still there. It became a ritual, a way to include them in the season without the overwhelming sadness that had crushed me the year before. I also started journaling. Each morning, I would write down my thoughts, my feelings, and the memories that surfaced. Some days, the pages were filled with tears, but others, they held small moments of gratitude, memories that brought warmth instead of pain. Journaling became a way to release the emotions I had been holding in, a safe space where I could be honest about my grief without fear of judgment. Another step was learning to say no. The pressure to attend every event, to be present at every gathering, felt suffocating. The previous year, I had forced myself to go, thinking it would help, but it only deepened my sorrow. This time, I gave myself permission to decline invitations that felt too heavy. Instead, I focused on the things that brought me even the smallest sense of comfort. Sometimes that meant staying home with a cup of tea, wrapped in a blanket, and watching the same old holiday movies I used to watch with them. I also sought professional help. Finding a therapist who specialized in grief was one of the most important steps I took. It wasn't easy at first. Talking about the pain, reliving the loss, felt like reopening a wound, but over time, it helped me see that my grief was not something to be conquered but something to be carried with love and gentleness. My therapist helped me understand that healing didn't mean erasing the pain, but learning how to live alongside it without letting it define me. Perhaps the most surprising thing I discovered was the power of giving back. I started volunteering at a local shelter during the holidays, helping serve meals and wrap gifts. It wasn't about distraction, it was about finding purpose. Being there, surrounded by others who were struggling in their own ways, reminded me that grief isn't a solitary experience. We all carry burdens, and sometimes, helping others carry theirs lightens our own. Still, the journey was not linear. There were setbacks, days when the weight of loss felt unbearable, but each time, I reminded myself of the progress I had made. Healing came in waves, and with each one, I found a little more strength, a little more light. Through it all, one resource became a constant guide: coping with grief and loss during the holiday season. This book became my companion, offering insights and gentle guidance that I hadn't found anywhere else. It didn't offer quick fixes or empty promises. Instead, it gave me the tools to navigate the complexities of grief in a way that felt compassionate and empowering. The practical steps, the relatable stories, and the thoughtful exercises within its pages helped me transform my pain into something bearable. If you're struggling with grief during the holidays, I can't recommend this book enough. It was a lifeline for me, and it might be for you too. You can find a digital copy at libriffy.com, just follow the link in the description. It helped me find my way back to myself, and I believe it can help you too. The journey to healing wasn't a straight path, and even after discovering tools that helped, I faced days that felt like I was back at the beginning. Grief is like that. It doesn't let you walk a perfect line from sorrow to peace. It twists and turns, sometimes dragging you into the darkness when you least expect it. But what I realized, with time, is that every stumble, every tear-filled night, and every moment of doubt was part of the process of learning how to live again. After discovering coping with grief and loss during the holiday season, I understood that healing is never about erasing the past or forgetting the love I had lost. It's about integrating that loss into the fabric of my life in a way that allows me to keep moving forward. The book helped me develop practical steps that didn't feel overwhelming but instead gave me small victories that added up to a profound shift. One of those steps was reimagining the holidays in a way that felt meaningful. I couldn't pretend things were the same, so instead, I decided to create new traditions. I started with something simple: writing a letter to my loved one each holiday season. I would pour my heart onto the page, sharing what I had experienced that year, the milestones they missed, and the memories I wished they had been a part of. These letters became a way to stay connected, to honor them without being consumed by the grief. Another step the book guided me through was practicing self-compassion. For so long, I had judged myself harshly for not getting over the loss fast enough. I thought I was supposed to bounce back, to be okay for the sake of everyone else around me. But the book taught me that grief doesn't operate on a timeline and that allowing myself to feel the full spectrum of emotions was not a weakness but a necessary part of healing. I began to treat myself with the same kindness I would offer a friend in my position. I allowed myself to cry when I needed to rest when I was exhausted, and to find joy when it unexpectedly surfaced without guilt. One of the more transformative changes was how I approached the holiday season with gratitude, even in the face of loss. It wasn't about pretending everything was fine or forcing myself to feel happy. Instead, it was about finding small moments of beauty amid the pain. I would take walks on crisp winter mornings and notice how the frost clung to the branches, creating a delicate, glittering world. I found peace in the quiet moments, like the smell of fresh pine or the sound of carols playing softly in the background. These small joys reminded me that life, even in grief, still held moments of wonder. Community also played a vital role in my healing. Though I had isolated myself the first year, I gradually opened up to others who had experienced loss. I joined a support group recommended by the book, where I found people who truly understood what I was going through. We shared stories, tears, and moments of laughter that felt like tiny lights piercing the darkness. It was there that I realized I didn't have to carry the burden alone. There were others who had walked this path before me and were willing to walk it with me. Perhaps the most surprising shift came when I allowed myself to embrace joy again. It felt strange at first, like a betrayal of the grief I had carried for so long. But the book reminded me that joy and grief can coexist. They are not mutually exclusive. I started to find moments of happiness without feeling guilty, whether it was in baking cookies using a cherished recipe or decorating a small tree with ornaments that held special memories. These moments didn't erase the pain, but they brought balance, reminding me that it was okay to feel both sorrow and joy in the same breath. As the second holiday season approached, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. It wasn't the absence of grief, but rather the presence of resilience. I knew there would still be hard days, moments when the loss felt as fresh as it did on the first day, but I also knew I had tools now. I had a path forward. If you're reading this and wondering if it's possible to find peace in the midst of grief, I want you to know that it is. It won't happen all at once, and it won't be without pain, but it is possible to carry your grief with grace. And if you're looking for a guide, coping with grief and loss during the holiday season was that guide for me. It provided me with the comfort and direction I needed when I felt lost. You can find a digital copy at libriffy.com, follow the link in the description. This book helped me find light in the darkest season, and I believe it can do the same for you. The first holiday season after finding coping with grief and loss during the holiday season was not without its challenges, but it was profoundly different from the years before. Instead of feeling trapped by the expectations of the season, I felt free to navigate it on my terms. I knew how to say no without guilt, how to honor my grief without letting it define every moment, and how to welcome small bursts of joy without fear of betraying my loss. The days leading up to the holidays still carried an ache, but it was no longer the all-consuming pain that had once paralyzed me. I remember sitting by the window one frosty morning, watching the snow fall softly outside. There was still sadness in my heart, but it didn't feel like a weight anymore. It felt like a quiet companion, a reminder of the love I had lost but also the love I had known. I allowed myself to smile. Not a forced smile for others' sake, but a genuine smile at the beauty around me, at the memory of the person I loved, and at the knowledge that I had come so far. As the holidays arrived, I found myself drawn to moments of connection. Instead of retreating into isolation, I accepted invitations that felt right. I attended a small gathering with close friends who understood my journey. I didn't feel the need to pretend I was okay. They knew the story, and they offered space for me to feel whatever I needed to feel. It wasn't about putting on a brave face, it was about showing up authentically and allowing the warmth of friendship to ease the edges of my grief. One tradition I created that year was hosting a small gathering in honor of my loved one. It wasn't a formal affair, just a few friends gathered around the fireplace, sharing stories, laughter, and even a few tears. We lit candles and took turns sharing our favorite memories of those we had lost. It was beautiful and bittersweet, but it brought a sense of connection that I had missed in previous years. This tradition became a way to keep their memory alive while also embracing the present. I also learned to embrace solitude differently. Before, it had felt suffocating, like a reminder of what I had lost. But now, I saw it as an opportunity for reflection and self-care. I spent quiet evenings with a cup of tea, wrapped in a soft blanket, reading books that soothed my soul. I allowed myself to feel the sadness, but I also allowed myself to rest, to breathe, and to find moments of peace in the quiet. There were still hard days, days when the absence felt unbearable, when the sound of a familiar song would bring tears to my eyes. But those moments no longer felt like failures. They were part of the process, part of the way I honored my grief. And as I continued to practice the steps outlined in the book, I found those hard days became less frequent. One of the most powerful lessons I learned was how to give myself permission to feel joy again. There was a moment during that holiday season when I found myself laughing, truly laughing, for the first time in what felt like forever. It caught me off guard, and for a brief second, I felt guilty. But then I remembered what I had read: joy and grief can coexist. They are not opposites but different threads woven into the fabric of life. That moment of laughter didn't diminish my love or my loss. It simply reminded me that I was still alive, still capable of experiencing happiness, even in the midst of sorrow. As I moved forward, I realized that healing wasn't about reaching a point where I no longer felt the pain. It was about learning how to carry it with me in a way that allowed me to live fully. It was about finding balance, between remembering and moving forward, between sorrow and joy, between holding on and letting go. And so, as I sit here now, reflecting on the journey I've been on, I feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Not just for the healing I've found, but for the tools and guidance that helped me get here. Coping with grief and loss during the holiday season was more than just a book, it was a lifeline, a beacon of hope in the darkest times. It gave me the courage to face my grief head-on, the wisdom to navigate the complexities of loss, and the reassurance that I was not alone. If you're struggling, if the holidays feel like a burden you can't bear, know that there is hope. You don't have to face it alone, and you don't have to figure it all out by yourself. This book helped me transform my grief into something that no longer held me captive. It helped me find light in the darkness, and I believe it can do the same for you. You can find a digital copy at LibriFFY.com by following the link in the